If someone who is born in this continent goes there, probably won't survive in that environment. Their skin becomes darker and darker. Okay, it gets darker and darker. They stay there. They reproduce there. And the next offspring, when they're born, they still have the same skin color like the parents had, both white parents, okay? They adopted, their skin became brown, you call it tanning, okay? Skin became tan. When they come back, skin slowly becomes white again. What does it call? Is it called natural selection? Is it called adaptation?
That's talking about, it's
you know,
of generations. It's like
okay,
you're Australian.
I give you 1 million years.
Australia was there
How
for
much
a
time do you
years.
want? How much time do you want?
Over millions of years.
Okay, I give you 1 billion years. So they go there, their skin starts to become darker. 2 white human beings, okay? Their skin becomes darker under the sun. New offspring is produced. They still take parents' genes and they're white.
Yeah, they're white. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. They stay under the sun. Their skin becomes darker. When they reproduce, next offspring is still white. Yes. Given 1 billion years, they will produce black offspring. Is that what you're telling me?
No.
For 20 years, you're projecting into the future. I'm giving you an example of how we can see today.
You are doing it from the word go to the future anyway.
No, I'm not. I'm not giving anything. I'm telling you how it can happen.
So are you going backwards?
Can I just finish what I'm
in
saying?
your theory?
I'm giving you an example of artificial selection. We do it all the time. We choose the cow that produces the most milk. That's artificial selection.
But cow remains the cow.
Changed.
Cow does not change into a horse.
I know.
Yes.
We've domesticated cows for about 10
Yeah, I know that.
years
You
max.
don't have to tell me
It's not a
cow
long
gives
time.
milk. I know that. You can take it as a given.
I know, we've domesticated the cow for only about 10,000, 20,000 years, okay? It's not a long time. Likewise, human beings, some of them, especially in the northern regions, they've adapted to be able to digest milk. A lot of humans can't digest it as well in the east. That's a mutation. It occurs and it changes over time. It means that those people that can digest milk are more able to survive. That's why they did survive in those regions. My point is today, a lot of Asians in South Asia
become something other than human beings?
No, because it takes millions of years.
So how does your theory work where one species transforms into the other?
Mutations
I still don't understand.
that occur over thousands of years, you add them up.
Not just mutation, a positive mutation, according to you.
Yeah, obviously if it's not positive, they'll die out.
Well, there is no example of positive mutation so far.
They're all positive, because if it's not positive, you won't survive in the environment that you're in.
Well,
mutation has to adapt
in theory,
to the environment.
In theory, what you're saying, maybe it's positive, but practically we haven't seen any example of any positive
I'm
mutation.
positive mutation because I've got light-coloured skin because I live in a northern climate. I originated from creatures that started off in Africa who had dark skin.
Come on.
Because we migrated out of Africa to places where there's less sunshine.
You have checked all your ancestral history?
No, this is natural selection. We were selected for having
were you
lighter
still a
coloured
human
skin
being at that time?
so that we
Were
can
you still a
absorb
human
more
being?
sunlight.
Sir, I'll save you some time.
Yeah.
Were you still a human being at that time? Yes.
Which time?
Are you when you had a darker skin?
Yes, I evolved.
Are you still a human being?
Yes.
Thank you.
I mean, it's debatable.
Coming back to your point.
It's debatable at what point in evolution you give a species. Well, you asked me a question.
Okay. I take the question back. Can I have a conversation?
No, you've asked me the question.
Sorry, my fault. I apologize.
You might learn
I'll take it back.
Try and learn something. Listen to me.
Thank you.
Try and listen to me.
Thank you. If I want to learn about adaptation, I'll come to you. Right now we're discussing
something. Finish my point, because you asked me a question.
I respect you, you're older than me.
You clearly don't respect me. No, you don't respect me. You're not interested in learning.
No, I'm not. Thank you. I'm not. Thank you. Yes.
Look, my point. Let me just say this. I'm sure, from what I've explained, that you agree with artificial selection because we have cows, we have goats, and we've.
Okay, I'll tell you what I agree with. You don't have to put your words in my mouth.
Okay, look. Do you agree that we've chosen certain animals that have characteristics that we enjoy and we like and we need to survive? Is that
within the same species? Probably yes.
Okay, within the same species. Yeah. Okay.
No problem.
Now, have those animals changed visibly from their wild ancestors?
So of course not. Cow remains the cow, still the same animal.
You've got wild bison in North America. They're very different to wildebeest in the African Serengeti.
Exactly. But wildebeest is the wildebeest. Wild bison is the wild bison.
They're the same genus, okay? They're the same genus.
Well, you have 40% the same gene as cucumber. I don't know what you're talking about, mate. What's wrong with you?
The gene. You don't need to be insulting, man.
What's wrong
the
with you?
genus is the same. I didn't say the genus.
Well, you have the same genes, up to 40% like a cucumber. You know that.
The genus, not the genes. The genus of the animal, the ox, okay? You have different wild ancestors of these different animals that we have, like cows.
Give an example of cat family, for example. It's much closer.
The canine family is very close.
Yeah,
to,
but
say,
cat
the
remains the cat, lion remains the lion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I finish my point about the fact that animals change, and they've changed because we changed them, because they have characteristics that we like?
No, I haven't seen a lion become.
Okay, thank you.
Do you agree based on what, sir?
We've changed.
Animals, they're
No,
manipulating
but
animals. They're
we're
manipulating
not
breeds.
discussing. We are not discussing animals. For example, cow starts giving more milk, etc. We're not discussing. We're discussing cow becoming something else, given enough time.
I'm changing the gene of the same cow.
You're not changing. You're not changing sexual gene. You're changing the somatic gene, and it does not produce a different species. This is the whole point.
Can I just give you the narrative, because you're not understanding what I'm saying. I'm trying to help you understand.
No, I do understand what you're saying.
You're not, because you're not understanding what I'm saying. You're saying, well, has the species changed?
So you already know what I know. What did I have in breakfast this morning?
You asked me. Come on, let me just finish my point. I've let you speak a lot. Let me just finish the point.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
We change animals, agricultural animals. The cow, a wild ox, does not look like a dairy Jersey cow. They look very different. The dairy cow takes all its energy and produces milk, and it's quite skinny and very lean. And a bison on the North American plains, it's very thick, it's got loads of fat content, doesn't produce a lot of milk. A big difference over 20,000 years. That's called artificial selection. That cow can't survive without human beings. It has a relationship with them. If it's out in the cold, in the freezing cold, it doesn't have any hair on it.
You don't
it will
need
die.
to explain to me the history of cows. I know that.
But I'm trying to clarify.
Just come to a point.
I'm trying to show you the different changes. That's my point. That's the thing you don't understand. The point is,
does that cow remain the cow?
The cow isn't adapted to survive without human beings. That's
Yes.
the process of natural selection. It's artificial, though.
Bison remain bison?
No, they're the same,
yes or no?
They're the same species already. My point is there's not enough differentiation, but you can see the drastic differentiation.
Okay, I'll give you much closer species.
Can I just finish the
lion, cat family.
Let me just finish the point.
You have a cheetah and a cow.
Let me just finish the
cat.
point so I can tell you how the species does change over time.
No, you don't need to tell me, my friend. Okay?
Well, you asked me how the cow
You're trying past 2 hours, it's not working. I'll tell you why. Because what you are speaking about is the somatic changes in the genes. It does not reproduce a different species unless your sexual part of the genes is changed.
No, that you're wrong in that.
And you haven't given me any example where sexual part of the genes has changed.
That's not the way it
produce
works.
a different species.
That's not the way it works.
This is the only way it can work. There is no alternative. Unless you come up with something, an alternative to a science which has to be faith-based anyway.
Finish the point about the animals that we have, okay? So you can understand how selection works, how natural or artificial selection works. So you can see that these are mutations that occur after the organism reproduces itself. DNA doesn't reproduce perfectly, okay? There can be little nicks and mistakes here and there that may or may not make an animal more adapted to its environment. That's my point. When that occurs, the animal that is more adapted to its environment will survive, okay? And it will pass on that mutation.
Who's disagreeing with that? What I'm disagreeing, you are saying one animal didn't survive, the other did.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Why does
no one disagrees with that.
Because of the genetic difference that makes it more adapted, yeah?
Doesn't matter what. It could be genetic, could be physical differences, which comes through genetics anyway. What we're saying is, what you can't show is one animal transforms into the other given enough time according to your theory. If they are separate animals, so don't go back to saying two separate species survive. Stick to the point that one species transforms into the other given enough time. This is what we were discussing. No one is disagreeing with two separate species surviving.
The idea that we've created to categorize nature and all of its different parts doesn't mean it exists in nature. I'm trying to show you that an animal can change into a different animal through the process of
you haven't showed me yet.
I'm trying to explain to you, but you keep interrupting me, my friend. So just let me finish the point.
Okay, how much time you how much
2
time?
minutes. If you don't interrupt me,
I'll zip. How much time do you need to show me one species transforms into the other?
2 minutes. Okay?
2 minutes.
Just 2 minutes. Okay. So we have the process of artificial selection. Okay. We choose the cow. We choose whatever it is. If that animal is left in the wild, it will die because it's adapted to survive with human beings. Okay. Now, if you have another animal in nature that is more adapted to, say, I don't know, another organism because of a change in an environment, it survives in that new environment, it will reproduce itself over time. It will prosper, the other animal won't, because the environment has changed. There is a genetic difference between that animal and the other animal already through the process of natural selection. Now this new animal that survived in this new environment, when it reproduces itself, it doesn't reproduce itself perfectly. There can be little nicks in the DNA code through the sexual process. When different DNA merges together, you produce the same animal, but there may be some differences. There may be some mutations.
Give an example. So give an example.
I'll ask for 2 minutes. Just 2 minutes. Okay. That change in the DNA, okay, that is continuously passed on, and as they continue reproducing, you'll have more and more mutations. We're talking about thousands and thousands of generations of different animals, and when we're talking about 1 million years, these mutations add up and can be quite significant, along with the process of a changing environment that facilitates the process of natural selection. You can get a change of a kind, a change from one species to another through that process. To me, that makes sense. I hope it makes sense to the people who have described it well, but that's the idea behind it.
I read that definition in Science magazine already. My question was very simple, which you haven't answered. Give me an example of one species transforming into the other. What you have given me is a theory which just you have your 2 minutes. Just
ask me for human beings. Yeah?
Just
ask me for an example.
You have your 2 minutes. Just listen to me now, please. Yeah. Just listen to me now. You gave me a theory, okay, or a definition of so-called Darwinian evolution, whatever it may be. Okay. You said you have one species that did not survive in a specific environment, you had another species that survived in a specific environment. I already said before you gave me this textbook definition that I don't disagree with that. What I disagree with when you say the surviving species, given enough time, can transform into a different species. So for example, a cow can transform into a lion, for example, okay? Right? Well, you can use whatever two different examples, I don't mind. You can use a hyeno and an elephant, I don't care. Okay? One species which is a distinct species transform into another species which is a distinct species. Okay? I am saying the only way it can happen is when you have changes in the sexual DNA part of the cells, okay?
What do you mean by the sexual DNA part of the cells?
Okay.
I understand this, yeah.
You know the process when you reproduce, you have somatic cells. If any change that happens in somatic cells, no new species does not come out. The only way you can have new species when is the change in the sexual cells, not the sexual part of the cells.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think that's wrong.
Okay, give me an example. Okay, so nothing changes. Let's say human beings, when they reproduce, we have X and Y chromosomes.
So you think mutations can't occur?
I don't think you. I think you just brushed everything under the carpet.
No,
what I
what was
said.
your point? You said you can't change.
I haven't made a point. So if you allow me to finish, I'll make a point and then you can respond to it. Okay? So my question to you was, give me an example of one distinct species transforming into another distinct species.
Okay, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo neanderthalis, Homo floresiensis. There's a lot of animals that have changed that have led to human beings.
Okay, you have one fossil which for one species, you have another fossil for another species. Where is the transformation? It's like, let's say for example, you have a cow and you have a goat. Cow gives milk, goat gives milk. Differences in sizes, two separate species, okay? Give me an example of a goat transforming into a cow or vice versa through whatever process you want to adopt. I don't care.
An example of an animal changing to another animal.
Yes.
First of all,
this is what we're discussing. We're not discussing one species getting instinct, other species surviving. We're not discussing that. No one disagrees with that, okay? We know when meteors came in, dinosaurs were extinct. That's the theory at least. And there are species that survive. So no one's disagreeing with that. What we're disagreeing is one species transforming into the other given enough time according to your theory. That can only happen when there is a change in the DNA and not just every part of the DNA is only the sexual cells. Okay?
Make something clear.
Otherwise you will not have a different species from two specific species.
Okay, let me make something clear.
Can you answer that question?
Yeah, I'm answering. Yeah. It's not a straightforward answer, so I have to give you something like a minute or two. It's not a clear-cut thing where you say if the animal is going to change today from this into that. That's why I have to give you the example of the mutations that occur over a couple of generations. The point is, you don't have a change of a species in 1 day or 1 year or even 100,000 years. It can take millions of years for these things to change. My point is the culmination of these mutations over time leads to the change in the species.
You have already said that. Can you answer my question?
I
please?
answered it. That's it.
No, you gave me a textbook definition from a science magazine. I put it to a specific test. Give me another science book. What I asked you is, I gave you a specific...
Dinosaurs to birds. What do you want? I'm always
okay, give me an example.
Dinosaurs to birds. Okay, we have good fossil records of the dinosaurs and how they actually...
Hyenas to human beings. That doesn't make any sense.
Hyenas and human beings.
Well, you said dinosaurs to birds. I said football to human beings or cucumbers to human beings.
That happened. They're the
well,
same.
show. Give me the evidence.
The fossil records are there.
Fossil records are for two separate species. They're beings. And that one species transforms into the other. I made this bold statement. You have zero fossil records. Zero. In Hindi, you call shunne, right? Shunne.
There are tons and tons of fossil records that prove these animals have
four separate species. Give me transformation from one
You
to the
cannot
other.
observe a change of an animal to another animal. Hope you
So,
understand
so
that.
you have
So to use that as an argument,
snakes with wings and flying.
you cannot observe a snake today changing into a lizard tomorrow. You cannot do that.
But you should have the
Human beings
records.
cannot-
You should have the you should have the fossil records to be able to do that.
Yeah,
If macroevolution is true, you should have the fossil records. They don't exist.
The fossil records do exist.
They do not. You,
Okay.
do exist.
Okay.
So
So,
how would you describe
so,
these
so
records?
let's understand. So you have fossil record of dinosaur, and you have fossil record of bird. If the transformation from dinosaur to bird is true, where is the fossil record in between for the
You
transformation?
have the intermittent creatures that came in between that period of time.
So-
they actually exist. I'm not a professional or a scientist in this field.
Okay,
but
I'm
I've seen
gonna save you
images
some
and
time here.
fossils.
I'm gonna save you some time
You're
here
gonna-
and
you're
save
gonna
my
walk
time.
away, yeah?
I'm gonna walk away because
Because you don't believe they exist, these fossils.
no, because
You don't
what
believe they exist.
no, because
I think any rational person will
Can
know
I
that
tell you what I
there's a
believe?
whole field of paleontology where people are discovering new things every single day.
Yeah,
So to
I-
argue that these fossil records don't exist is just feigning ignorance.
I didn't say fossil records don't exist. I said fossil records to support your theory that one species transforms into the other.
That's it.
Filling in the gaps don't exist. Zero.
Filling in the gaps.
You are telling me one species can transform into the other given enough time. I made a bold statement. You have
Yeah,
zero
very bold.
fossil records to prove that. Unless I have this internet here, you show me fossil records of any species that existed previously transformed into the other species with every single fossil
There
record
are
in between.
diagrams in there, man. I'll have to show you. Just type it in. Type in evolution and you'll see.
You do it, please. So you're showing me.
Fine. Everyone's seen these images before. I mean, you don't have to show people.
No, but I'm consider me as illiterate.
okay, fine.
As compared to you, I want to see. So you're showing me fossil records from one species transforming into the other. Don't bring me Australian and Pakistani cow with milk differences, please. Okay? Because I already know that, and you have been arguing for the past 3 hours exactly the same.
Okay, this is a classic image. It may not be 100% factually correct, but it proves that. This is an image of how the human beings have.
Yeah, well,
Do you think people?
nice image.
Bro, have
Okay, wait, do you think people, he walks away at that point? That actually was an image
Yeah.
of different creatures, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo floresiensis. He believes that that's a picture. That is based on the actual fossil evidence. People don't just create these animals out of nowhere. These animals exist, and they have existed. And to say, no, sorry,
A priori assumption.
to say,
It's
no,
based on a priori assumption of what's happened.
to say, sorry, to argue, to say that these
Yeah.
animals that have existed, and we know have existed based on the fossil record, they are insignificant as to our previous history, our evolutionary history. They're insignificant. To argue that, I find is just either you're feigning ignorance or it's just disingenuous. Because at the same time, you can either say that these aren't significant because I don't believe they are, or you can say that God created us. And it's your choice to choose which one. You can have both, but to say that that idea is that these animals are so insignificant, all these fossils have been put there for no reason at all, to say that and say it's not significant, and then to walk away like that and not finish the debate, it shows me something actually. It shows me that you don't want to look at the evidence. Because as soon as I put a picture up that shows the actual progress of how human beings have ancestors that have existed, like Homo habilis, like Homo erectus.
It's showing us
okay?
it
They
shows
exist.
the opinion of some people. It shows some atheists what they believe has happened. But even early in the argument, you couldn't really come up with a valid argument for the mechanism of macroevolution. You said mutations. Mutations, by their very nature, are harmful.
No, they're not. No, they're not. That's why I disagreed. I'll tell you why.
Okay,
You
sorry,
see,
I must have misunderstood, sorry.
Because there's no such thing as a harmful mutation. Because if there was, it would not exist. The animal would not exist because it cannot survive in the environment. Because the only thing that works is the mutation that
Okay,
is
that's not
adapted
true.
to its environment.
No, that's not true.
It's very true.
I'll tell you what it's like. I'll give you
go
two
ahead.
examples.
Go ahead.
One, you've got in caves, you've got fish which live in caves.
Yeah, they're blind.
Total darkness.
Yeah.
They go blind, their eyes obviously atrophy over generations and go.
Because they don't need them.
But in normal,
That's the
in
beauty
normal
of
life,
it. They don't need them.
in normal life,
Sir, if you're a fish in the cave and you're blind, why would you use the energy to supply
that's
those
the
cells?
case.
Supply those cells with the different sources of energy they need to survive. Why?
So
Because
far,
the
we're in
animal-
absolute agreement. So
Okay.
far, we're in absolute agreement. But that genetic, all that genetic coding for eyes to use them, if that cave opened up for some reason, for sake of argument, they wouldn't be able to get their eyes. They wouldn't be able to get
They
their
would
eyes back.
die. You're
The
absolutely
genetic
right.
mutation
They would
is
go
gone.
extinct. You're
Another
absolutely right, sir.
example of genetic
But that's the process of life. That's how
Okay.
nature changes and accumulates.
Another example of genetic mutation would be like with sickle. Some people have sickle cell anemia. Many athletes, for instance, by some sort of stroke of fate, people who have that gene or have the recessive gene, they have a higher tolerance to malaria, like plasmodiums, the different species of malaria. Okay, so that mutation does give them some little bit of advantage, but at what costs? Yeah, having that sickle cell sort of gene, it's a pretty dire gene. It's not these mutations he's referring to, it's a bit like having with a program, having little kinks in a program which develop over generations for that program. It's not a good vehicle to use as the proof. This is how we have evolved. This is how nature has evolved. How animals have evolved.
I'm not saying that I know exactly how we came from. What I'm saying to everyone here generally is that there are these fossil records that exist, and we have to understand them. If scripture, religious scripture, does not show us what they mean, then what do we do? Do you want us to ignore them? But that's the evidence. The beauty of science is that it changes over time. That's the whole thing about it. Okay. You don't have a one set belief. It can change. If there is a inconsistency.
I don't know what you agree with me, but no one would dispute those fossils are fossils. That there was this hominid type species. There was this.
No, some people do dispute that. Unfortunately, they say it's the same species. Yeah, it's Homo sapiens, but they've misclassified it. And the truth is, there may be misclassifications here and there, but the fact that this is a different organism that is very, very similar. It's a hominid. It's a bipedal organism.
Sorry, I'm not probing into your argument.
Not at all. I haven't said anything.
That's fine. The other gentleman walked away. So
okay, but basically, all of us are coming from an a priori assumption. So you either assume there is no God, and therefore we've come out around.
I'm not saying I'm an atheist. I'm not saying there's no evidence for.
I just use it as an example. Everyone is of an atheistic or agnostic bent. You are, by your very nature, going to have a priori assumption that there's been no supernatural involvement, how we've come about, and therefore you've got to find some other alternative to that.
I try not to because you can't evidentially prove it, but at the same time I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. I just say it's on the terrain of science to discuss things about God or religion because they're not evidentially proven. Some people may not agree with me. A lot of atheists will say no, science is the only thing we need. I'm saying no, it's not. But the idea to say that this is the case 100% is very, very unhumbling and unbefitting of someone who's religious, because the whole point is to humble yourself in line of the fact, in lieu of the fact we have so many things that we don't understand and we don't know. Science is the only thing, well, one of the only things actually, that can actually help us traverse this terrain and understand it. It's reductionist by its very nature, yes, but at the same time it helps facilitate our understanding. Sure, religion does as well in its own sense, but to say that, evolution doesn't occur because somehow you believe that God created us individually, no, that's not fair, because you have to look at it as an impartial observer. That's what science does.
But you've got some underlying philosophies which are guiding you. Therefore, it's not necessarily as
like what, for example?
Well, you already mentioned reductionists, for instance, and so forth. So you already have those underlying assumptions. I'm not saying you're being dishonest or anything. I'm just trying to say they are there, and we as human beings we love to pretend that we're totally sort of impartial, that we can sort of look at the facts and not be persuaded by any sort of our background, our education, what we believe or don't believe. It's all going to be there. So
you're right. I agree with you.
You've got the fossil records. You've got different disputes about how old this rock is, how old that rock is, how it's come about, so on and so forth. And we like detectives. We have to put it together. If we like detectives, we have to have some sort of framework to work out how this come about. So if you come back to you from a sort of theistic background, like Muslim or Christian or Jew, as an example, you're going to believe that yes, it was God who ultimately created the universe, and therefore it's God ultimately behind it. Even from an agnostic or atheistic bent, it's going to be on the other side. By your very nature, you're going to try and say, well, I want to be impartial, therefore I won't include God. I've seen that with the American, like you've got the, I've actually seen that with one of the big American scientific website, which is open to all people to look at. They often cover the issue of creationism and sort of science, religion, and so forth. They said, we must be impartial. We must be impartial how we look at facts. Therefore, I'm paraphrasing what I'm saying, it's a bit unfairly. Therefore, we'll exclude theistic viewpoints. That's I'll tell you why I think that's fair.
Because as a scientific organisation, my opinion is, and I think it's true, science cannot prove or disprove the existence of God. That's a fact. So it's on the terrain of science to say whether God does or does not exist. Okay. You can't
so why is it fair to say that you won't have theistic? You will not listen to a theistic answer, but you'll listen to an atheistic answer. Isn't there already a problem there with the underlying assumption?
Because most of our society is organised around science and the fact that we can prove something, as we say, that's the way things are. And if you're dealing with nature, for example, if you're dealing with engineering or building physics or mathematics, whatever that is, you need a kind of a framework, and science is that framework. framework. Theology is different. It has its own terrain. So that's fine.
So
I personally
okay, but that's an artificial distinction. So you've got making an artificial distinction between belief and reason. And that's, I think, was one of David Gold, the late atheistic philosopher who died about 10 years ago. Can you remember Gold?
Yes.
Yeah. He came up with that idea, saying you've got one mechanism which is going to be science and sort of reason and so forth, and the other side is belief and religion. And it's an artificial distinction. You
can argue that, sure.
Yeah, sure. And I would argue this as follows. I mean, if it was a different field of science,
It can be religious and it can be scientific as well.
Of course. Let's say it's a completely different field of science, like chemistry, for instance. You could be as religious as you like, whether Muslim or Christian or whatever. And most atheistic scientists shouldn't have a problem. It's only where it comes to a very small aspect of science, but it becomes it's inflated so large, which is about our origins. That's when the problem starts. That's when they say no.
Contention there, yeah.
That's where the
Look, some people are evolutionary biologists and they're religious, and they believe in the theory of evolution and the process of differentiation of organisms. Some others don't believe that, but they're also religious. And that's where the contention is, because the scientific consensus, although not always right, consensuses aren't always right, but in this case there's a big burden of evidence to put forward.
Okay, but
to say that this isn't true, it's not fair, because the evidence is very strong.
Actually, sorry, can I just say, when you are making this distinction about the evidence being overwhelming and outright dismissal of that particular evidence is unfair or unjust.
Yeah, the reason I say that is because the evidence works in tandem with other pieces of evidence.
Right,
the point is that they fit together very well in terms of how we can explain the process of, particularly the natural selection process and the mutation process.
Yeah,
when leads to the differentiation.
No problem. When you were using words, I was just thinking about it.